Hello everyone, Richard here at Calvin Wazoo with another video and another one in the ongoing series, Frank Zappa, one album at a time. And today I'm going to be talking about the soundtrack to the new documentary film, Zappa, which I have here on Blu-ray. So it is available out on Blu-ray. Talk about this a little bit first before the soundtrack. If you are relatively new to listening to Frank Zappa and learning about him and what he was doing with his music and don't really know anything else about him, this is a really good documentary in terms of telling his story and providing some context that you will recognize being reflected in his music. For the hardcore Zappaphile, or if you've been collecting Zappa for a long time and been reading about Frank Zappa for a while and have read the biographies that are available, this is not going to provide you anything new, all right? It's still a nice documentary, as I say, in terms of the way it is telling the story. It does reveal a couple things that, for me, connected some dots. And for example, this reveals what I had already picked up from my other reading of biographical material and other articles about Frank, that he was at best a very distant father. It's evident in the film that, his children obviously, loved him very much and recognized the importance of what he was doing. But on the dad front, he, wasn't quite as strong. And for example, it talks about how Moon Unit kind of, just dropped in on his life when she was already a teenager and said, "Hey, Dad, I'm here," because he did so much. He would isolate himself in his studio at home and was constantly working, and then that led to the production of the song Valley Girl, which she does the Valley Girl vocals, and so she got, she kind of forced her way into doing something with her dad, and in a way her dad then, capitalized on that opportunity and, exploited his daughter, for the production, of the record. But so it just kind of more closely outlines what I was already thinking about that, that whole situation and other things that I had read about. The other thing is, it kind of cements again what I was already picking up with a lot of reading, is that the relationship between Frank and Gail Zappa was tenuous. And because, it very clearly shows that, when Frank was touring, all those songs about road groupies and things like that, he was, indulging in that lifestyle. In fact, on most tours, even from the earlier days, the band would be staying in one motel, and then Frank would have his own room at a better hotel. and and then he would be doing his own thing. And Gail saw the opportunity for a meal ticket, and that's why I think she really persisted and continued with the marriage, because she saw financial gain and opportunity in the relationship, so she was willing to put up with Frank's philandering. So again, this is not something that's really new if you know or have done a lot of reading about Frank. What the most interesting part to me is when they started talking, when the film starts addressing his cancer, because I have this, or had this theory or idea that beginning in the mid 80s, I always had this notion that his quality of work began to decline. Roughly about with the release of You Are What You Is and other material kind of interspersed in there, we see inconsistency in quality of production. And that's, my opinion. And I think my thought was the development of his cancer had a lot to do with that, because it identifies the fact that it went undiagnosed for a very long time. He talks about that in here, and that he would go and be tested, but nothing would ever come back. And he was continuing to live this lifestyle of that was, the average person just isn't going to be able to endure, not just with the touring aspect, but the work that he put into writing music. I mean, it was something he would be doing all the time, and he's living on burnt weenie sandwiches and cigarettes and coffee, So that was kind of my theory, and this kind of indicates that very well could have been the case. I mean, in the 80s and, before he died, there was archival material that was, being released, such as from, Guitar or the Shut Up and Play Your Guitar series, and also You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore series. And then there were other material that was being released, but this was all stuff that was recorded and produced and put together, years ago, and it was just being packaged, into new releases. When we're talking about his new material, that's where we start seeing some inconsistency in delivery. I mean, a really good example is Thingfish, which has some really, really brilliant parts to it. But then there are these other parts that just seem to be dredging up old material and repurposing it, and it just doesn't come off very well. So in terms of that, I find value, in the Blu-ray, because it sort of connected some dots for me that I was already doing dashed lines between. And but overall, it's a good documentary, and certainly recommend for anybody, even a Zappa aficionado, because as I say, you may not learn a lot of new things, but the presentation is good, and you certainly get the sense of his family loved him, and what's the word? They loved him, and they recognized his genius, because, I mean, in terms of a composer, Frank really is one of the preeminent 20th century composers, period. Regardless of, what you say about the prurient nature of some of his music, in terms of lyrical content. but the structure of his music, the music that he wrote. This guy was a genius, and like many geniuses, they don't necessarily have the greatest people skills, except in terms of getting what they need or getting what they want. So that's the documentary. Then there's the soundtrack. So this soundtrack, and I've got the hype stickers for, this is the hype sticker for this soundtrack. That's the hype sticker for the box set, which I'll get to. All right, so this is the original motion picture soundtrack. Zappa, so it's a double album. And again, if we think of, interesting label, like side one here, it says the music accompanying this film was composed and conducted by Frank Zappa. It's on this beautiful crystal clear vinyl. Then on the other side it says this, it is not intended as a synchronized musical score. I tell you, I've bought clear vinyl before, and a lot of times you'll find this minor imperfection where there's a fleck of black vinyl or something that's, an impurity, so to speak, inside this. This is both of these records. The vinyl is perfect, crystal clear, and as it says here on side 3 on the label, this music is provided as a brief cross-section of the composer's total output in many musical fields. And then on the other side, including everything from full orchestral compositions to short pieces for jazz ensemble. So, so that is what this record provides. Again, for the Zappa collector, there's not a lot of previously unreleased material. It's got a little booklet that comes with it that, well, it's not really a booklet. It's just like an insert that's got the track listings on it. And then we've got the track listing on the back. So a lot of these, for example, it opens up with the song Motherly Love, which is simply taken from the album Freak Out. It's not a, archived version of this or performance of this. But then there is the song Memories of El Monte, and Oh in the Sky, and The Duke. These 3 next songs on side 1 were recorded live at the Whiskey A Go-Go in 1968. So there is some, new material, so to speak, maybe that we haven't heard before. But many of the other songs on here are simply the same studio recordings that appeared on other studio or other official releases. But there are some really great pieces, and it really does sound excellent, except for, and this was really disappointing, my particular copy on record 2, so side 3, it opens up with the black page, the piano version, which Ruth Underwood is playing, and it also, it's the same version that appears on the 40th anniversary edition of Zappa in New York. But there's a pressing flaw in my copy, so that, it kind of sounds like there are these spots as the stylus is going through the groove where you have, it sounds like static in a way, or, little, it's in there. And I've cleaned the record, multiple times. I've examined the grooves, and there is no visible flaw, but I guess something happened in the pressing of the copy that I have and that's the only spot on all four sides where there is a audible flaw in the vinyl. And it's got to be a pressing flaw, because in the box set, there's nothing like that at all. It's not a recording flaw. It's not a mastering flaw. It's a pressing flaw. And so that's really kind of disappointing that I have that, because it's a beautiful, beautiful song. Ruth's piano playing is just absolutely brilliant. And, it's marred. I don't know if any of you also have this. I'd be interested in finding out. You leave a comment in the down under if you hear that same audible flaw in the Black Page #1 piano version. It's the opening track on side 3. Let me know. But again, back to the content. If you are a general enthusiast about Frank, but still don't know a lot about his overall material, this is really a great album to pick up, because it covers in the four sides the span of his career, and has some very good examples of the material and the way his performances and performing, evolved over time. So, it starts off with Motherly Love from Freak Out, so you're hearing, and then the early tracks of the live tracks from the Whiskey A Go-Go. How Could I Be Such a Fool, which is also from the mystery disc in Old Masters box. Then there's the song Absolutely Free, which is from We're Only in It for the Money. It's nothing really new, but we're getting the experience of listening to his music. Then it goes into Call Any Vegetable, which is excerpts taken from the famous Fillmore West recordings, which showed up in the White Album, Fillmore East. That's the Fillmore East. But so these are new excerpts that were taken from the Fillmore West. Road Ladies, which is from Chunga's Revenge. Cheapness from the Roxy Performances. So that's not Roxy and Elsewhere, but the subsequent release that came out semi-recently, the Roxy Performances box set. Then there's the song Apostrophe, which is interesting. This was recorded live in Los Angeles at Rehearsal Hall. And Apostrophe is that jam from the album Apostrophe, which is going to be the next one I'll be talking about. But just briefly, that was a jam with Jim Gordon and Jack Bruce. And so that wasn't something that got performed a lot during shows. But this was a case where he did do this, and so they've got a recording of that. Then there's Sofa, which is from Zappa in New York. Then the Black Page, which I talked about. Then there's Moe's Vacation. This is something, a new piece. It's a live recording from the Circus Krone in Munich. It's from a '78 show. And then it's got Dancing Fool, which was taken from Saturday Night Live when he performed it on Saturday Night Live back in 1978. And then we've got Valley Girl, which I was talking about with Moon Unit. But that's the studio version from the album Ship Arriving Too Late to Save a Drowning Witch. The Meek Shall Inherit Nothing, which was a live recording from the Pier in New York City in 1984. So there's something that, it's not from the studio releases. And then we've got some material from when he was speaking to about House Resolution in the, labeling of music, which is on Frank Zappa Meets the Mothers of prevention. So it's not like anything new that was brought out. And then the final side 4, is Envelopes, which has the original 1983 vinyl mix that was on the London Symphony Orchestra Volume 1. Then Get Whitey, which is from the Yellow Shark. So that's another orchestral piece. Then we've got G-Spot Tornado, which is from Jazz from Hell, but this is the recording also that came from the Yellow Shark, so it's being performed by an orchestral group. And then the album closes with what is probably regarded as Frank's most magnificent and best, most best, but let me rephrase that because that doesn't make sense. It closes with what many consider his best and most magnificent guitar solo, Watermelon in Easter Hay, which is taken from Frank Zappa Plays the Music of Frank Zappa, a memorial tribute. This was a recording that was released in 1996, so it's a live version of that, unlike necessarily the studio version or the version that was released in Joe's Garage. So on that level, it's if you're a Zappa collector like I am, you're going to want this. But this is a good record that for people who are familiar enough with Frank, but they don't know everything about his catalog. And this provides a pretty good portrait of his output. Now, for the real hardcore, there is this. All right, this is the box set. All right, this is we're talking five albums, track listings here on the back. So it's got everything that the double LP has, but there's a lot of other stuff on here. So instead of opening with Motherly Love, we're opening with Any Way the Wind Blows from Freak Out. You're probably wondering why I'm here. And then there's a performance of Every Time I See You, which was written by Zappa and Collins. Why am I blanking out on his first name? Talk about old age. But it's a performance by the Heartbreakers. And then we've got some other stuff. But yeah, there's a lot more other songs on here. And including with the Black Page #1, the piano version on this has no audible flaws. So again, I'm thinking that what I heard on the double album set, is a pressing flaw with the issue or with the particular one that I got. But yeah, there's a lot more songs on here, and including the Call Any Vegetable excerpts, except this, we also get Happy Together thrown in there, plus Scumbag, which showed up on Playground Psychotics, which was part of those Fillmore shows in the Fillmore East. There is a couple songs also showing the material that Frank Zappa was involved in terms of production, such as the Captain's Fat Teresa Shoes, which is something that was done by the GTOs, Girls Together Outrageously, on their album Permanent Damage. But Frank, produced that. Then there's also the song No Longer Umpire, which comes from the Alice Cooper album Pretties for You. which Frank was involved in the production, of that. Record 2, side 3 is very interesting because while it has, some songs that are, Frank's, the first half of the side, we've got Black Beauty, which is from the mystery disc, Oh No from Weasels Ripped My Flesh, and then Mother People from We're Only in It for the Money. But then we get a performance from the Orchestra de l'Opera Bastille of the finale of the Firebird Suite by Igor Stravinsky. Stravinsky being a significant musical and compositional influence on Frank. And then we've got a little bit where Frank, it's just some dialogue, well, it's really monologue. It's his responses to some questions when he was being interviewed with Craig Eldon Pincus back in 1974, where he's talking about Edgar Varese. And then the side closes with a Chicago Symphony performance under Pierre Boulez of Ionization. And Ionization is this percussive composition by Varese that is, I'm pretty sure it is the first record Frank ever bought with his own money. And as the story is explained in the movie and also in this dialogue is that when he had some money and he went into the record store, he asked to have the craziest, most outrageous sounding record, and the person at the store showed him this, and Frank was completely enthralled with this to the point where he tracked down Varese, and gave him a call. So that's really nice that, you get that performance by the Chicago Symphony of Ionization. It is an amazing piece. It is a piece done entirely with percussive instruments. Now record 5, sides 9 and 10, it has a lot of dialogue excerpts from the film, but then it also closes with the watermelon in Easter hay. So it's really nice packaging, very nice stock here. And when you take the lid off, very, very nice. We've got a booklet that has, it's just, photos, archival photos, of Frank working in the studio, performing, other more candid shots perhaps. So, some of the songs are remastered by Bernie Grundman. I'm looking through the credits here. All of this material that is brought out by, the family. Now, this is what I really like about the Zappa box sets, the last few of them. All right, so you've got the records in here, and then they provide this very nice ribbon so that you can lift them up out of the box. I really like that. That is just such a nice touch. And then each record comes in a very sturdy cardboard inner sleeve, and it also is in, a nice archival sleeve, inner sleeve, paper sleeve, but it is lined, with the plastic or whatever. And it's black vinyl, okay? But, and then each label just, is different. There's no track listings on the label. but each of the inner sleeves also has the track listing for that particular record with all the, the information there. So it is a really super, super nice job in terms of packaging. And then on the inside is a quote. I'll pull these out so I can read the quote. And it's from, the movie as well. You get that in the movie, but it kind of explains what he was doing from his perspective. So it's, quote, "My desires are simple. All I want to do is get a good performance and a good recording of everything that I ever wrote so I can hear it. And if anybody else wants to hear it, that's great too." Sounds easy, but it's really hard to do. And, when you read the biographies, this is something that Frank talked a lot about. From a very early age, he heard music inside his head. And then he learned how to transcribe that into paper. And then he would try and find musicians who could perform what he heard in his head and wrote down in paper. And he was a taskmaster. He was, a perfectionist, because he heard what the music sounded like to him in his head, and it was he wanted musicians who could do that, and he was not always successful in finding musicians who could do that. And when he did find musicians who could do that, there's I don't want to say that the musicians, were incapable of producing the sounds that Frank heard, because they were all exceptional. All the musicians he worked with are just absolutely brilliant and skilled musicians. It's just that it didn't always meet Frank's expectations of what he heard in his head, which is part of the reason why he ended up going with the synclavier and producing electronic music, because then he had more direct control over producing the sounds that he was hearing in his head. But, that was his goal. There's something else that you'll see in the film is that, the tape library, where all these tapes of everything, because he taped everything, every show, he's got all these masters, which is why some of this posthumous material is coming out, because they've been able to go into the archive and find new material to press and release, for audiences. It's just amazing, amazing, amazing. And that was kind of his lifelong struggle, was to be able to take what he heard in his head and put it in a format so that other musicians could play it, and then he could hear what it really sounded like as opposed to what it sounded like in his head. And that's all he wanted to do. And, he managed to entertain people and make some money at it at the same time. So there you have it. If you're not a serious Frank Zappa fan, the box set, we're talking more than $100. I think it's like around 120. That's an expense that you don't need to be making. The 2-album release, is a great introduction. It's a great anthology, so to speak, to have, so if you're only interested in, you've got a couple favorite Frank Zappa albums, that I'll buy those, but there's a lot of his other albums, that, I'm not going to buy or something like that. This is a good one, to have, even for the casual, the casual fan of Zappa, and the Mothers. it provides a good overall experience to all the types of music that he created during his career. I would love to hear from some of you in the Down Under, especially, if you already have this copy. I'd be curious to know if you have the same Audible pressing flaw that's that's with the black page #1 piano version. I mean, the rest of the album it is a high quality, brilliant pressing. It's just frustrating for that particular song because it's such a beautiful piano piece, and then you get this every once in a while, happening. And like I said, I've really checked the record and examined it as close as I can, and I've washed it, using disc washer, and I've used other microfiber brushes to try and address if there was anything inside the groove, and I still hear it in the exact same places. So that tells me that, yeah, this is a flaw that occurred during pressing. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Leave your comments in the Down Under, and always remember to pray for the people inside your head, for they won't be there when you're dead.